Hello, Ted.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? This is Bill over at this week's Long Island News. I know you gave us a call. This is for my studio audience, or my audience, is to let them know this is Ted Phillips from Newsday, and he's got a story in the Long Island section. The Oyster Bay proposes to the Highway Department, not the board, set the parking fees. Oh, that sounds interesting, Ted. What do we got going on there?
Well, there's been a move that has not yet been made public yet, exactly, to increase the fees at Oyster Bay's town parking lots by the railroad station. There was a proposal that was made, but the board tabled it without discussion. That was going to raise it by 900% for Oyster Bay residents in unincorporated areas. That was going to go up from the cost of $10 a year to $100 a year. That was tabled, and then a new proposal has been made, although it has not yet been made public, that would shift that responsibility for increasing the permit fees onto the Highway Department commissioner rather than the town board.
Hmm. And why do you think that is?
Well, I can't really speculate on why they would do it that way.
Oh, okay.
Certainly, there was a lot of public pressure brought onto the town board back in December of 2016 when they considered raising the permit fees for what they were going to create a new category of parking called premium parking. And they were going to have about a little bit less than 900 parking spots available for $100 a year as premium parking.
Right.
And there was a outcry at that time that people thought it was too much, and people were upset about that, and the town board at that time backed off from that proposal.
Okay. So, I mean, well, I'll give you what I think. I mean, I think that they thought that the board's proposal was so wild that they'd give it to the highway department instead. Is that too simple a...
I have heard some people say that that's what they believe was at work there.
Okay.
The town supervisor has not told me yet what his intentions are, so at this point I can't say why they would want to do that, but certainly there are people who have said that this would allow the board to shield itself, and
right.
Councilman Anthony McInnes said as much, saying that the board was elected to take on tough decisions, and they should keep the authority themselves so that they would be held accountable for the decisions.
Right. Well, I was curious. A knee-jerk reaction from me is what makes them think that the highway department is going to be any better than the board as far as the outcome for them?
That's a good question.
Is there any? I mean, I understand them. Okay, the board, says something, and they just feel like, well, that's unacceptable, so we'll go to the other side of the street, and we got the highway department. But what makes them think the highway department's going to be any better?
Well, the highway commissioner isn't up for elected office.
Okay, right. Okay.
That could be one reason.
Okay.
I suppose you could argue that the highway department has a lot of data at its disposal and has the ability to study things like what is the market rate for this kind of service, what are the operational expenses that are needed to be paid for, what's the right mix of subsidy from property taxes versus user fees. Right now, the permit fee only covers a small portion of the cost of operating the parking facilities for the town. Actually, more of it is paid for through property taxes than by the parking permit fees. Although it's not a privatized system, so you do have a subsidy coming from the town that you wouldn't have if you had a purely private parking lot.
Right. I mean, it's I just get maybe it's not an impression. Maybe this is exactly what they're just trying to, let's figure out the maximum amount of money we can get out of this thing. Nobody's talking about, or I won't say nobody's talking about, but I haven't heard what is the cost to run the parking lot, and why can't we make fees that pay that cost, rather than how much can we soak the parker for? How much money can we make? the sky's the limit. Let's get what we can.
Well, the 2018 budget, which did not include this fee hike, for the district, it's divided as a district. The parking district, their budget is $8.2 million. Of that, the parking fees pay about $700,000 at the current rate. So property taxes are actually paying about 85% of the operational costs, and that includes things like administration, debt service, maintenance. So there is an imbalance, and they could make the argument that they would like to sort of change the proportion there, that you would have more user fees and less property tax, or they might be looking just for revenue. We don't really know what their motivation is, because they haven't explained it yet.
Well, when you talk about numbers, I mean, it cost $8.2 million to run the parking lot, and they have to be subsidized for 85% of it. I mean, it's not my favorite answer, but that's a good argument for privatization.
Well, no one's made that argument that I'm aware of.
Yeah, well, I mean, because the way it stands, it looks like a losing proposition. I mean, obviously, if somebody privatized it and wanted the fees to pay, they're going to go up 900% at least. Is that what the board was trying to do? Do you think?
Well, I don't know what they're trying to do. Certainly, the town has had a lot of financial difficulties, and over recent years, a lot of it due to rapid increase in debt in the 2008 to 2014 time period. And so you've seen a lot of debt service go up, and so an increasing amount of operational expenses has become this increasing debt service. So the town needs money, and this may be one way to get it, is to look at fees. You can raise fees.
So we're not just talking about the parking lot then.
At the moment, we're just talking about the parking lot. Back in October, the town made a big deal about cutting property taxes by $1.3 million. This hike, if it were to go in and keep the same numbers of permit users paying at the new rates, would raise about $3.6 million in additional revenue. So that's a lot more than that property tax cut was. However, if you raise prices, probably not everyone is going to purchase the permits.
Yeah. Wow. Now, when you mentioned the 8.2 million, how many parking lots are we talking about? Is that all of them on the?
Well, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you've got 6 parking lots that have required permit. You got Hicksville, Syosset, Bethpage, Massapequa, Locust Valley, and Glen Head, and there are 6,891 permitted parking spaces total. And the town issued for the most recent time period. It gets a little complicated because some of the permits are for 2 years and some of them are for 1. But for the most recent time period, 41,202 permits. Whoa. So there's a lot more permits than there are parking spaces. And this has actually been a complaint I've heard in the last few days from a number of people about how can they raise prices when you can't even find a parking space.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the story on The Producers. Let's just keep selling permits. We don't need spaces. 41,000. Isn't that a bit skewed? I mean, how do they justify selling 41,000 permits when they only have 6,000 spaces?
That sounds a little weird. Yeah.
Well, the price hasn't gone up. I think in almost 18 years, and if you're a resident and it costs you $20 for a 2-year permit, that's kind of a bargain. I mean, why not? Yeah. Why not buy it? And if you only use it a couple times, you've probably got the value out of it. Right. So I don't know how many people are actually using it on a daily basis.
Right. Wow. So what's the next thing that's going to happen with this?
Well, we'll see what happens next week if they go ahead and have a hearing or a resolution that tries to make this shift. to give the rate setting ability to the commissioner. If they try to do that, there might be a public response. They might come up with a different proposal. They might come up with. They might decide to put it off for a while. We just don't know.
Wow. So I guess you're going to follow this story, yes?
Most definitely.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll make a date for the future sometime. Give us a call, and I'd love to talk about exactly what goes on here. This is it's interesting, and it affects a lot of people.
It does.
It really does. Well, I wish I could solve it, but I can't write a check that big. Ted, I want to thank you for calling us today and talking about this.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
All righty. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.